So e-waste, back to e-waste. Demanufacturing is the disassembly and recycling of obsolete appliances and electronics. Most office machines are used about 3 years, most TVs about 5 years. So you can imagine that's a cycle of having a lot of new things and a lot of things thrown away. This is a pile of really old, dated cell phones at this point, but um, if you think about how often you need a new cell phone or something like that, you can think about how many of these things might need to be recycled or dealt with in some way. So about 70% of heavy metal contamination comes from e-waste, and batteries make up about another 10 to 20%. Another idea of how to deal with some of these things is something called cradle to cradle. And the idea is that there's the production of a product that is used, and then you have to return it to the manufacturer where they take it apart and remake products out of that. And so this makes it less of a consumer responsibility to dispose of things properly. The companies actually take the materials back and remake them into new things. So this is a different way of thinking about our supply chain than we currently do. So right now, we make something. It's a single chain of events where materials are mined out of the ground. They're made into a product. We use them and then we throw them away. And the new things started over again with that cycle where new things had to be taken out of the ground to make something. So these kind of circular economy ideas are ideas where things aren't thrown away. They're being reused or remodified into new things so that we don't have to extract as much new material out of the ground through mining. So we talked about all these different R's. Reuse and repurpose are more efficient than recycling generally. So some things are routinely reused. Things like auto parts, brass fittings, woodwork, bricks, fence pickets, routinely reused and repurposed, and actually are worth a decent amount. So it's economical to actually reuse these things or sell them back to someone else, even though they've been used once. Glass bottles and some plastic bottles can actually be cleaned and sanitized and refilled. A long time ago, glass Coke bottles, they would be taken back. Some beer bottles they do this with, where they clean them and then they refill them with the same thing. You don't have to make a new shape bottle and melt it down, which is very, very energy intensive. But cleaning them and refilling them is no big deal. It doesn't take very much energy to do that at all. The main thing is getting the bottles back to the right place. And so that's the complicated part, really. I've actually gotten milk before. This probably sounds pretty old school, but there are certain grocery stores that still do this. You pay a deposit on the milk bottle, and it's glass, and you return it, and you get your money back for the deposit that you paid on that bottle, and you can use that to buy a new bottle. And so that way it gets cleaned and reused again. In developing countries, people that are very poor often make a living scavenging, sorting, and reprocessing scraps from dumps. So this is what their job is, and they bring different materials to different places to sell them when they find things that are worth enough money to do so. To refuse is most efficient. So I'm sure many of you have experienced going in Walmart and coming out with a crazy number of plastic bags to get your groceries home. So bringing your own bags and not using these is the best way to reduce plastic. Not using plastic straws. There may be some people that have disabilities that make it hard for them to drink things without a straw, so this might not be a viable solution for every single person, but for most of us, we don't really need a plastic straw. And so there have been a lot of campaigns to get people not to use plastic straws in particular. Another way to shrink the waste stream is to deal with packaging. So producing less waste. Sometimes there's excess packaging. Some packaging is necessary to keep the product from breaking or spoiling or things like that. So if it breaks or spoils, then the whole thing becomes waste. So a certain amount of packaging is certainly necessary for that. Some packaging is not really necessary though. I've never seen this in the US, but this is an example where they have shrink wrapped a banana. A banana comes in great packaging. It's called a banana peel, right? So, you know, some of these things aren't necessary. You know, like why is a piece of bread in a single plastic container? Again, not something I've seen in the grocery store very often, but there are definitely things that are probably overpackaged. So like you can buy a whole bunch of individual servings of goldfish, or you can buy a giant container of goldfish and it's got a lot less packaging and you can divvy it up yourself. So there's lots of ways like that where there's extra packaging that we don't necessarily need. It's also usually cheaper to buy the giant thing of goldfish or whatever it is that you're buying than it is to buy all the individually wrapped ones. So paper, plastic, glass, and metal packaging material make up about 50% of domestic trash. So that's a really large amount. So if we can cut back on buying things with lots of packaging, that would really help with that. And we can increase also is another option is biodegradable plastic. So if we're going to have packaging, why not make it something that can decompose? So there are many companies trying to create things that have less plastic and less waste. So like you can now buy toothbrushes made out of bamboo handles and just the bristles get thrown away as plastic waste. And they come in cardboard boxes so you can recycle that and you can compost the bamboo handle. There are lots of things that can be refilled. We don't necessarily in Ruston have a lot of stores that offer these options, so these are probably more available in many larger cities. But some of these things last longer and will, you know, cost you less over the long term if you don't have to rebuy them as often.